Well, hello, Julene. I am so glad to see you. It was fun being at your house last week, but now we're separated again. I'm in Ohio and you're in Washington, D.C.
I miss you, Deb. I like sitting next to you at my kitchen table.
Oh, I do too. And for all our listeners, you go back and listen to last week. It was fabulous. We had so much fun together, didn't we?
Oh, it was a blast. It was a blast.
Yes, it was. Well, welcome to Stickin to the Truth with Julene Jackson and Debbie Jansen. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into why some politicians promote one result, but work toward an opposing result. It's so confusing. We need to find the truth. Julene, are you ready to uncover the truth?
Yes, I am, Deb. Always. Let's do this thing.
Okay, great. Well, first, let's get some tariffs out of the way. Everyone seems to be so polarized about tariffs. I like to get the facts on any subject and then stick with the facts, and that's why we are sticking to the truth. But sometimes the facts get kind of muddy in the water. A well-known economist says that tariffs are trouble, won't work, and will destroy our economy. And another financial wizard that I listen to says that they are the best way to control America's financial future and that they will increase our economy. Who do you believe? I don't know. So part of the way I stay centered is to imagine the situation happening in my own life. I've heard 4 commentators say that we shouldn't be messing with sliding amounts for tariffs. Everyone should go to 0 and that's it. Well, I tried to think of how could I apply that to my life. And I thought of the example I heard about. You're going to love this one, Julene. I heard about 2 high school dropouts who wanted to make some money. They borrowed a friend's truck and went to a local farm. They asked the farmer how much he would charge them for watermelons. The farmer said they were $1 each. So they loaded their truck and went to town. They put out a sign that said fresh watermelons, $1. Well, within hours, they had sold every watermelon on their truck. You would think they would have been happy, right? But when they counted their money, they only had $100. And that's what they paid for the watermelons. So how can that be? The 2 of them stared at their 0 profits and then said, "We need another truck." Those 2 bumpkins didn't understand that 0 for me and 0 for you isn't helping the economy or their pocketbook. And doesn't that remind you of tariffs for everyone? Other commentators say that we can't tell other countries what to do. Well, if that's the case, why did they tell us what to do? If they have high tariffs, why can't we have high tariffs? And if they won't buy our stuff, why should we buy their stuff? It seems to me that tariffs may be a way to nicely tell other countries to stop hurting us and we won't hurt them. And I don't think that's bad. What do you know about tariffs, Julene? I may be wrong on this.
Oh, I loved how you broke it down with the 2 little watermelon bumpkins. Now, that's an example for some reason I could really relate to. I think I understood that. You know, I think it's really interesting. I heard President Trump just a few weeks ago remind America that up until 1913, when the 16th Amendment was enacted, really America got most of its revenue from tariffs. And remember, in 1913, what transpired is it's the amendment that enacted federal income tax. Up until then, it was the states that were responsible to provide their portion of the federal budget to Washington, D.C. based on the population of the state. So then the state could determine how they were going to tax the people. So, you know, if you lived in Ohio and it was 8% of the population of America, then Ohio was responsible for 8% of the federal budget. And so it was up to the governor and the state legislature to decide how they were going to tax its people. And then the remaining income came from the tariffs. And it worked pretty darn well before we had federal income tax, because even though we had 6% of the world's population, we were producing over 50% of the world's wealth. So, this formula of tariffs has been what our founding fathers really intended. But, Deb, what happened with tariffs, my understanding, we went from fair trade to free trade after World War II. America, is a way to help the countries that were decimated by the war. We allowed them to have free trade with us. They could, charge us taxes or tariffs, but we were not going to charge them, as kind of a way to rebuild their economy and their country. But as the years have passed and inequity has set in, and we have seen how it's impacted our manufacturing and lost jobs, and American businesses have gone overseas to set up because it's cheaper in China and Mexico and maybe even India to, build things, because the labor standards are lower. And then they turn around and then sell their products to the United States at a minimal a tariff or a no tariff. And of course it benefits them, but it has gutted, our jobs and manufacturing and employments. And just look at the auto industry. And so President Trump has said, this free trade has really, we've been ripped off for many decades now, and it's got to stop. I mean, Deb, did you realize that we're the largest consumer in the world? So when America does well economically, it impacts the whole world. We're the, the greatest buyers, consumers. And so we're buying American stuff, foreign stuff. So, I always like to say, let's level the playing field, President Trump is saying, and as America will do better now, we'll bring jobs back to America, manufacturing back to America. And when America does well, all ships rise around the country, around the world. And so I think it makes a lot of sense what he's wanting to do.
Oh, Julene, honey, we need to get you a big truck with flags and everything, and we'll send you to every news station and have you talk to them and explain this to them. That is a great explanation. My goodness, I love that. And you know what you're talking about, and you're explaining it well. I'm just a mama bumpkin, but no.
I think when you kind of understand the history of how we've allowed these unfair taxes, it came from a very good part of America's heart to want to help the world get back on their feet, right? But now everyone's back on their feet, and now they're just simply taking advantage of, our kindness here, and it's time to level the playing field.
Well, I absolutely appreciate the history and how it's worked for us before. So Trump is right when he said this could eliminate the IRS. Boy, wouldn't that be fantastic? So let me ask you another question. I also don't like it when people take a complicated official action and they go to the extremes. Trump is unhinged and all this tariff stuff is going to bankrupt our country. We need to impeach him and throw him in jail. Yet they can't offer what you just offered, the statistics or the practical applications that would be responsible for that kind of disaster. Yes, tariffs are difficult and scary, and we haven't been using them a lot, but our officials have information, and I'm going to put you in that line with them. Our officials, and Julene has the information that we don't have, but will help us make a good decision on this. And it seems logical that we should get these tariffs with the other countries under control, because unfortunately, if we don't do something, everyone is saying we may go bankrupt with our debt. And if we try something and it doesn't work perfectly, we are still going to have financial problems. But maybe we can work ourselves out of this with these tariffs, and we should use them. It's kind of like watching a scary movie. The bad guy with the chainsaw is running towards you, and you freeze. And everyone in the audience is screaming for you to do something. And it's true. If you don't move, you die. If you run, you still may die. And if you run at him, you may die. And if you go jump in a hole, you may die. My point is that no matter what is happening, it's important to do something. Don't just stand there. The status quo never gets you out of a problem. Make the decision to try. And that's what I think this administration is doing. And it's refreshing and it's hopeful and it just might work. Right, Julie?
Oh, absolutely. For a moment there, I thought I was living out my worst nightmare about someone running after me. That was funny, Deb. Yes, I love what this administration is doing because quite honestly, Deb, they are taking us back to what our founding fathers intended. It talks about tariffs in our Constitution, and tariffs worked up until 1913 when we enacted a federal tax, which really put us on the path to socialism and growing the government and assuming that, well, since their government's taken my taxes, they should be able to solve all my problems. And, people began to turn their brains off and just put their hands out. And that's not what our founding fathers
they did.
intended. I mean, what Trump is doing is he wants to empower and, rev up our economy again and get the jobs and the manufacturing, back here on our homeland. And he actually said, I heard Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary of Commerce under Trump, he's that, billionaire businessman in New York City that knows how to get the job done. Half of his company was wiped out. They were in the towers at 9/11, and he rebuilt that company back up. And he would have died himself, but he was taking his child to, kindergarten that morning. But he said, look, the president told me if I can balance, if I can cut back certain trillions of dollars and bring in extra trillions of dollars, which tariffs would do that, he will eliminate income tax for people making $150,000 or less. Now, that's called prosperity economics, and that gets a whole lot of people, I can imagine, very excited. So when people call President Trump, a lunatic or insane or unhinged, I think people that want to just keep doing what we've been doing are the ones that are insane. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Well, he is not playing that game, and he is taking us back to 150, 200 years ago, and he's going to put us back on track of, these tariffs, fair trade. If a country is going to charge us 20% tariffs, we're going to charge them 20% tariffs. Sounds pretty fair to me. Nothing insane about that, Deb.
I think so, Julie. You are on the right track, and I agree with everything you said. It's great. Thank you so much. Well, let's move on to our big topic for today, because we've been discussing this a lot, you and I. And I'm going to say this again in our program. We do not hate Democrats. We do not dislike our Democratic friends who disagree with us. We don't do that. I personally pray for them, and I hope that they have a good life, but I don't understand their focus. Everyone is noticing that the Democrats' brand is tanking. I know that polls can be manipulated, but it's got to be really bad when on March 26, Bill Maher announced on his real-time show that the Democrats now have a 27% approval rating in an NBC poll and 11% rating with independents. And an article in the New York Post stated that they had lost huge, big time with young adults and young Americans. Dems hit a new low with just 23% approval rating with young college students and young adults in their 20s. What's going on, Julene?
Well, I think he's doing exactly what the people who put him in office hoped that he would do, and I think it's exciting. So, I teach these classes on the Constitution for Moms for America. And so I'm always having to explain that, look, we live in a republic, not a democracy. A democracy is where the majority of people rule. It's kind of mob rule, right? We talk about, chaotic if we had a true democracy. I mean, people all go to the poll and democratically vote, but we vote for one guy who then goes, or girl then goes and represents, our values, our problems, our needs. And so, I think the Democrats have forgotten that enough people in America voted not only for President Trump, but for a Republican-led House and Senate. So I think that, he's doing exactly what the people who put him in office wanted him to do. And I just saw polling yesterday that his numbers are going up. President Trump's numbers are going up all across the board. I think they're going up all across the board except for people 70 and over. And I think might be because a lot of elderly people are just home watching legacy media, CNN, MSNBC all day, and all they can say is how terrible he's doing, So, but even amongst the young people, his ratings are up. And so, I live in Washington, D.C., Deb. 92% of people in D.C. voted for Kamala Harris. And so I just live in an area where it's almost like everyone, and I get the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal every day, and I read the headlines. And according to those headlines, you would think our country is imploding. The current administration is just rife with conflict. We're falling apart. So I think these Dems are still not quite living in reality. I think they're just living in this echo chamber of like-minded people, and they don't realize that outside of the Beltway, people really like what he's doing. And quite honestly, I'm down in downtown DC almost every day, and I have not seen or felt this much energy in action in DC in several years, and it's very exciting. If you have eyes to see, you see it. You can feel it. And, his administration, the secretaries over the agencies, they are hustlers. They are working their heads off. I was just with RFK 2 days ago, and I can just see he's everywhere. But all of the secretaries at Agriculture, Department of Education and Commerce, and that I got to meet the FDA administrator. I mean, they're the other day. I mean, they are working their little heads off. And I think the press corps, rumor out on the street are having a hard time keeping up with everything the president and his administration are doing. They're tired. They're not used to having to work so hard with all of these changes going on.
I bet they are. I can see that. But yeah, what you were saying, Julene, is so right. It is so right. What I am trying to figure out is why are Democrats taking the stand of we're just going to keep pushing things that Americans don't like. And you touched on it, that according to the Constitution, we elect the representative and then they go out and represent what we want. So for me, the Democrats kept yelling at the American people to wake up. And guess what? We did. We woke up and saw that we don't like what they are doing. And yet they're so comfortable with controlling us that they want us to change, want us to change instead of them changing. And that's not how the Constitution or our freedoms in America is set up. And unfortunately for me, they've done such a bad job and stayed with so many foolish agendas that I don't trust them. And I'm afraid a lot of people feel that way. They don't trust them and they don't want to go back to the foolishness we've endured. Is that kind of where your feelings are too?
Oh, you're spot on. I mean, we have seen just the impact on our children. Our children there's a war going on against our children when it comes to unhealthy foods and the indoctrination in the schools of anti-American curriculum and just the gaming and the videos, social media, that is just the algorithms are just addicting these young kids. And even, vaccines too. They're making connections of vaccines and chronic conditions with young people. So I for sure think mothers are waking up. Hence, we have the Maha Mamas, Make America Healthy Again, and the moms that are leading this movement because they see that their children are suffering. So I told you this week on Tuesday, I was at the Health and Human Services Agency in DC. I brought my 2 daughters. And I was actually asked to speak at this event where RFK Jr. and the commissioner from over the FDA, Marty McCary, were going to be there because they were announcing a ban on artificial dyes that are made out of petrochemicals, gas, right? And that's where all the reds and the oranges and the yellows and the blues in our food come from. And, you know, these dyes have been linked and known to cause behavioral problems in children, hyperactivity, lack of focus, Tourette syndrome, tics, there's this huge upswing in cancer among children, and they're tying these petrochemical dyes to childhood cancer. So all these dyes are in all the colorful processed, you know, Gatorades and chips and candies and hamburgers to make it look red. They're injected in everything. And so, you know, they want to end this dangerous policy, end this foolishness, really, that these toxins and chemicals and all these ingredients that are illegal in other countries that we are legally putting in our foods. And we're starting to see the fallout with our younger children. So we are waking up, like you said, to this foolishness and fighting back against the war of the health of our rising generations.
Yeah. Well, let's see what you do with my list. I made a list of things that the Democrats support, and you can go to their online website where they tell you what they're about, or you can just view what they do, which to me is more important. But let me go through my little list, and you can comment on each one, or you can give me your list with this. But the first thing is that they are all for abortion. Now, I'm alarmed that some Democrats believe in late-term abortion. And in California, they have even tried to get a bill passed, and this was several years back, where there would be no consequences if you murdered a child up to 5 years old. That is just unthinkable to me. And thank heavens it didn't pass. But polls do reveal that over 50% of Americans agree with them on some form of abortion. But more and more women are waking up to the fact that it's a baby and they don't want to kill the baby. I've also heard that more than 90% of women who have an abortion regret it and try to stop their friends from doing it. That means change is coming. But the Democrats aren't changing on that. The second thing on my list is that Democrats are all for coddling murderers, thieves, and drug addicts. They support them with their laws. They don't support Christians or hard work or obeying the law. And part of the reason Trump won is due to common sense. People are waking up to the fact that not only do we want America first and common sense in our government, we also want it in our personal lives. And we don't want crime. We don't want murderers, thieves, or drug addicts. Number 3 on my list is that Democrats prefer to stand up for people with mental disabilities. And I'm not talking about things like autism or brain damage. I'm talking about just the unhealthy person that thinks they're a cat or wants to stand on the street corner and throw garbage at a young girl walking to school. That's okay with Democrats. But if that young girl wants to bring a Bible to school because she's afraid or wear a cross around her neck for a school team photo, they will take her to court. And that just makes no sense to me. They are proving over and over that they're not for the normal, smart, hardworking person. They want nothing to do with actual freedom-loving, faith-based, good families. And the last one, number 4 on my list, is that Democrats want to fly around the world and support murderers and killers. They want to reward illegal migrants when they rape and steal from our people and our country. In fact, they're willing to give those sometimes demonic people a driver's license so they can traffic our children. As a reward for hurting Americans, they put them on our Medicare and Medicaid rolls. Now, that's what Democrats are promoting. It's one thing to say I'm all for freedom, but if you promote the opposite, that tells me who you are. They don't stand up for hardworking people anymore. They don't praise the Christian who is an asset to his community. They don't praise the young entrepreneur for helping his fellow Americans. They worry about the transgender getting an award, whether he deserves it or not, but they don't worry about the harm that's happening to the little girls in that changing room. They worry about the criminals' self-esteem, but they don't worry about the victim that he hurt. They want us all to worry about the crazy people and then leave the sane people to die. All while they hold rallies and say, you are so stupid, just vote for me and I'll take care of everything. I'll steal your money and send it overseas so you can stay poor and afraid. Sorry, Julene, that's just where I am today. Their strategy just doesn't make sense to me. So I have a plaque in my office that says, your crazy is showing. You might want to tuck that back in. Yeah. They just don't seem to know what's going on. What do you think, Julene?
You have nailed it, sister. You are on fire. I love it. You know, I mean, as you put it that way, it definitely would seem like, you know, we're not the ones that are the unhinged, erratic, lunatic, incompetent people, or they seem to be for, you know, and you know that when a person is actually more concerned about the constitutional rights of an illegal terrorist gang member who everyone I've seen is tatted up from head to toe, that's just wreaking terror in our country over our most vulnerable, the safety of our children, when they're more sympathetic towards, you know, the illegal gang member over the children, I'm like, what is not right here? The common sense revolution, as I have heard, you know, Trump and his administration call it, is underfoot. And I think it's giving all of us, you know, fresh courage take that. I do think, though, Deb, it's imperative that all of these changes that are going on right now under Trump, these policies that he's making through executive orders, it's imperative that they be codified into statutes, laws passed by Congress, or in a few years, if we were to lose the White House, the pendulum would violently swing the other way. And so I think it's really, really critical that we are educating, that we're learning ourselves the principles of liberty and freedom that the country was founded on, of limited government, free markets, and proper checks and balances, and that we teach these things to our children and to our grandchildren, to our neighbors, to, you know, our local politicians and leaders, that, you know, this land was established on God's law, natural law, and they knew that our founders knew we needed to remain virtuous and morally strong and be a religious people in order for, you know, this free country by the voice really ruled by the voice of people, that the people needed to remain good in order to enable this type of government to prosper and thrive. And so I think it's exciting, but we have our work to do, Deb.
Absolutely, we do. And I agree with everything you said. And while you were talking, I was thinking you're exactly right. As far as how I view Trump, I know he's using a lot of executive orders, but I'm beginning to think that's to get the ball rolling and get people thinking about what he's doing and get people on board. And as we see success in the next couple of years, then Congress can get busy about codifying this stuff. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I do want to add again about me and Julene, that we are not mad at the Democrats. We are not frustrated with our friends. We're not putting anybody down. We just don't understand why you are for the things you are. I talked to a lady one time who was a Democrat, and I was trying to tell her, I said, go on the website. You'll see that they're doing this and that. Oh, no, my party would never do that. I've been a Democrat my whole life. She went home and checked it out, and she called me. She says, well, I guess I have to be a Republican now because I can't stand for that. And I think that's what's happening. I hope that the Democrats can evaluate what they're doing and make changes that will help not only their party, but will also help make America better.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
So Monday was the Easter egg roll at the White House. And we used to go to those when our kids were little. If, you know, certain people were in office, we got tickets. But now we didn't qualify anymore because your kiddies have to be 11 and under. But I loved how President Trump stood there on the balcony next to Melania on one side and the Easter Bunny on the other. And he talked about, you know, how Easter is a special time. It's one of he and his family's most favorite time as they celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, and that we need to, he said this, right, with the Easter Bunny and Melania and the big crowds. He said, we need to bring religion back to America. And his remarks were really consistent with this growing theme that I hear from him on faith, that we've got to get God back into our lives. And really, ever since, his life was almost taken in Butler, Pennsylvania, he has taken every opportunity to talk about how we need to get God back into our lives and into our country. And that beautiful Instagram message he put out on Easter, from the White House, highlighting the resurrection Easter morning and how this is a day of joy and peace, that he is risen. And I just love that we have a president, really for the first time in my life, that is unabashedly bearing witness to God and who understands that blessed is the nation whose God is Lord. And it is filling me with so much, hope for the future.
Oh my goodness. As always, Julene, you are a sane, smart woman who has the facts, and I just love you, darling. So thank you for sticking to the truth. I would like to end our program with a compassionate thought for those who followed and loved the Pope, because this happened on Easter morning. Everyone learned this. I listened to a biography about him and found out that he was a compassionate and loving man. In fact, some of his last words were about the people he served, his commitment to God, and the medical assistant who had taken care of him. I pray that he found his reward and that he heard the words, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Today I am praying for, and this whole week I have been praying for all Catholics around the world. And Julene, I know you have too. My tip for today is to be authentic. Be the person you claim to be. Be trustworthy and live by the same ruler that you use to measure everyone else. How about you, Julene?
I love it. I love that. Well, just having celebrated Easter and really the majesty and the authority of the empty tomb that we celebrated. And just a reminder again that God keeps his promises. So when we accept his invitation to show up to life, to come and follow him as he invites us, we get to do life with him, the creator of the universe. And knowing that just helps me to understand we're going to be okay.
Oh, I love it, Julene. Thank you so much. Well, guys, this has been a hard show today, but I think we covered some necessary information. So subscribe to this podcast and join us again. You can ask a question or request that we dig into a specific topic by writing me, Debbie, at debbiejansen.com. And thanks again to our wonderful producer, Ken Jansen. This is Debbie Jansen, and I'm sticking to the truth.
And I'm Julene Jackson, and we hope you will keep sticking to the truth. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.